Okay, good. All right. So self-care for executive assistants, thank you for being here. It's kind of interesting. I was just looking over our registration list, and I've been doing these webinars for a couple of weeks, and we have about 175, 180 people joining every week and registering for these. This one has like 250 people registered, and that just tells me how much this stuff is needed. It's also a really important topic to me, because it's something that I have failed at for a very, very long time, and am just, really starting to put some of these things into practice and making self-care a priority in my life. And I've seen the immense benefits of doing that. And if I can share anything with you guys to make sure that you do this before you reach a burnout phase, that's my goal. So I'm going to just take this off video and we shall get started. Again, if you have any questions throughout the class, type it into the comments. Happy to answer them. Feel free to unmute yourself. You guys are all muted right now, just because it's easier for the audio. But if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer, so type away. Awesome. Let me... Cool. So my name is Hallie Warner. I'm the Chief of Staff at Adam Hergenrother Companies. I am also a coach with Adam Hergenrother Training, and I do spend a lot of time coaching other executive assistants, admin professionals, chiefs of staff, and other small business owners and leadership professionals. So that's who I am. And again, this topic is really important to me, and it sounds like it's important to a lot of you guys too, which I'm really excited about. So what is self-care? We kind of hear this term thrown around a lot lately: self-care, self-love, taking care of yourself. And it's actually interesting. Just this morning, as I was going through my LinkedIn profile, I saw somebody who's really amazing. She's actually an admin as well. She also happens to be a writer and a speaker and a professor. And she's spoken at a couple of TEDx conferences. And she had posted something this morning about how she always hears, about 30 years ago, she never heard anybody say, "Oh, I need to get a spa treatment. I need a mani. I need to go get my eyebrows done. I need this. I need a latte," all of this stuff. And what I found really interesting about that is then she went on to say that investing in self-care isn't a bad thing, but maybe we should reevaluate what those needs are in our life. She gave a couple of examples, like, I need my brain to function at its optimal level. I need to love my family. I need a hug. And that is actually exactly what self-care is. Self-care is not about the external. Self-care is about the internal. Self-care is the right and responsibility to take care of your physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being. It's about taking care of all of those things, your mind, body, and soul, in ways that you can control yourself. And sometimes you can't necessarily control whether or not you can go to a particular yoga retreat, because perhaps it's out of your price range. Self-care is about really knowing which needs you want to fulfill and what needs you need to fulfill. It's about understanding how you feel, and then seeking out nurturing and nourishing activities that are going to meet those needs and generate the feelings that you're looking for. Sometimes buying a material item is going to fulfill that need for you, but that can be fleeting. So what other daily practices can you put into place that actually feed those feelings that you're looking for? Again, self-care is that inside job. It's that internal process. It's not really an external thing, like, going to the spa. And self-care is healthcare. And we're going to talk at the end of the session a little bit about things that you can do for longevity, that studies that have been done with in cultures that people live to be well over 100 years old. And it's interesting, as I was reviewing that information, it's literally just self-care practices, but they've been doing them for so long that they're living till well over 100, which is awesome. So another thing I wanted to just distinguish was coping versus self-care. So which can sometimes look the same on the surface. So coping strategies are behaviors that you use to relieve pain or discomfort in the short term, but don't necessarily serve your long-term well-being. For example, easy examples are alcohol, drugs, food. Those do relieve pain temporarily, but long-term, they're not actually good for you. Self-care are behaviors that serve our emotional and physical well-being over the short term and the long term. So conversely, that might be a glass of wine, but sometimes it's about where you're coming at and where you're coming from when you're when you're participating in these activities. And also it can be the intensity, or what need is that fulfilling? Is the glass of wine because you know, or the 3 glasses of wine because you know it's relieving some sort of feeling, or you're trying to eliminate a feeling, or not, not feeling that feeling? Or is it because you are indulging in an amazing conversation with your friends and you're sipping on a glass of wine as you're feeling that connection with somebody else? That can be self-care. So just, think about those maybe in your own life. And obviously the benefits of self-care are immense. They reduce stress, they promote inner balance and calm, clarity and focus, happiness. Taking care of yourself, you're able to take care of the ones around you that you love. Having a really great self-care practice enables you to thrive instead of just survive your days and your weeks and your months and your years. And ultimately, self-care can improve your health and increase your length of life, which is perhaps the ultimate goal. And actually interesting about the whole happiness thing, there was a New York Times article that just came out about Yale's happiness class. I can't remember exactly what it's called, but I can send you the link to it. And their most popular class of all time, and there's like thousands of students in this, is a happiness class, because we live in this world where it's immediate gratification. It's quite material, incredibly fast paced. It's all about achieving more and more and more and more. And maybe we're just forgetting about what the fundamentals are, and that's living a more inner calm and balanced life, and being happy. And that does look different to different people. I mean, for me, happiness does involve a certain level of challenge and high achieving, but that can't come at the cost of being stressed out or being burned out. So lots of work you have to do on yourself for some of these things. And people might be at different levels. I was at a massive extreme, and I did reach a burnout. And that's why this topic is so important to me, because I was not doing any self-care. So why do EAs need self-care? And this really is targeted more towards our executive assistants, our administrative professionals, those of you who serve others and support others on a daily basis. Because I say this again and again, but I truly do not know anybody who works as hard as executive assistants do. The ones that I know are, super high achievers, often workaholics, really willing to go the extra mile. They work long hours, really intense hours too. It's not like they're just sitting there, reading a book at the office. I mean, it is like intense, moving from one thing to the other. And it can be very mentally and emotionally draining because of competing priorities and competing demands. And that's not just like once a week, that can be hourly. The feeling of not always being in control of your time or your tasks or your day. A lot of our work is often dependent on maybe our executive or another director in the office. So, it's not even like you can say, okay, I need a little bit of a break. I'm going to slow down and just work on this one project. It's rare that can happen when you're working with a large team, or you've got an executive who has all of a sudden a deal blew up and you need to, renegotiate something, and you've got to, prep all the paperwork and get somebody on the phone. I mean, that's the nature of the business. Also being really relied upon for a lot of different things by your executive. Yes, for some, task management, also for emotional support, to keep a lot of information confidential, which again is part of the job, but sometimes that can be very highly charged and very sensitive information, which again can often be emotionally draining, whether it's something that might be going on with them, their personal life, the personal life of employees, sensitive information, like you might know that an employee is going to be let go soon, but yet maybe you have an emotional connection with that person. I mean, these are all things that can really impact your day, your stress level, your mood. And the other thing is sometimes self-imposed or forced isolation, which can be a drain as well. What I mean by that is sometimes it's lonely at the top. So people often know that if you're working with your executive and you have a really great and strong strategic partnership, then they're likely not going to be friends with you, or they're not going to say, hey, want to, go chit chat about whatever, because they know you probably aren't going to engage in that conversation. Or you might be, depending on how large your organization is, you might be just seen as, oh, she's, part of leadership and they have their own rules and, whatever. And then also sometimes it can be self-imposed almost for the same reason. It's hard sometimes to get really close when you can't necessarily share if you had a bad day, because especially with your coworkers, obviously I would encourage you to share that with a partner or a friend. But sometimes that's hard to do with your coworkers when it's confidential information. It's, you're maintaining this, a calm, sorry, I'm losing my words, making sure that the executive office is, looked upon a certain way. And while I definitely value transparency and vulnerability, I do believe that there's also a line, and I'm certainly not going to just say everything that's going on in my life and our executives' life and the leadership team. It's not my place, and it's not how I do business. So it can be a little bit isolating, and that also can make you feel like you don't have connections, which is some of the basic human needs. So for all of those reasons and many, many more, it's so important for executive assistants to have some sort of self-care strategies. Again, particularly because the hours can be very, very long, and you may not have a lot of time to yourself for various reasons. So being very self-aware can lead to greater success with your self-care. So self-awareness is the conscious knowledge of your own character, feelings, motives, and desires. And this might be, maybe this is where you start. Maybe you don't have a great understanding of what you need to feel fulfilled and to feel happy. And that's where you should start. Take the time to really get to know yourself and what it is that you need. What brings you joy? What makes you feel challenged? What makes you feel accomplished? What gets you out of bed in the morning? And that can be a lot, that can take a lot of time and a lot of self-reflection. But once you identify what those are, what those needs are, and how you want to feel, that's when you can start implementing the self-care strategies that are going to make sure that you're maintaining those needs that you have, instead of just using it as a Band-Aid, which is sometimes where those coping mechanisms come in, the coping strategies, when you get to a point and you're like, you just need something to fix it really quickly. However, if you understand your needs on a holistic basis, you can take care of them in just little tiny increments throughout the day. Therefore, you won't get to that point where you're, desperate for a cheesecake. Sometimes my go-to, or pizza, which doesn't serve any of my needs in the long term. So take just a minute to think about your own self-care. And what does self-care mean to you? It's going to mean something different for everybody. What do you want to get out of your self-care? And that's what I'm talking about. What is that feeling that you want to have after you've engaged in your self-care practice? And really identifying what your intention is going into it. You may have a different intention going into a workout than you do going going to like a paint and sip with your girlfriends. Those are two different needs that you're fulfilling. So, understand what your needs are, and then find the activity that's going to fulfill that need for you. And don't allow time or money to be a limiting belief on your self-care practice. That goes back to that external. It's not about a spa day or about, getting your whatever latte from Starbucks every single day. It's not a time, or even the time issue, because these are both objections about why people can't and don't do self-care, especially again for my EAs. Time is very limited and time is precious. So a lot of the reasons are, well, I don't have enough time. Well, the reality is you can make the time if you really take a good look at what you're doing throughout your day. And if you really take that conscious look at what are the needs that you need to fulfill. And if you look at your day and you see that 2 hours of your day are watching TV because you're so completely burned out at the end of the day, well, that's not really fulfilling a need other than maybe, zoning out. Perhaps you actually are searching for connection. So instead of spending 2 hours with TV, maybe you call a friend and, just take an hour to call a friend instead, which actually is less time and does not cost any money. And yeah, again, back to the whole money thing, these are internal things. The majority of these self-care practices don't cost anything. It might be sitting quietly by yourself for a few minutes. It might be meditating. It might be stretching, reading a book, all of those things. Okay, so here are the essentials of self-care. These are things that most people need in their life. Sleep, 7 to 9 hours is the recommendation. Again, look at your schedule. I actually did this recently for myself and some of my coaching clients. I highly recommend you take a look at your entire day and put hours next to every activity that you do throughout the day, both ones that are obligatory, like X number of hours at the office, X number of hours, with a kid's sports game or whatever, all of the things that actually have to do during the day, and include everything that you want to do during the day. Maybe you want to get 9 hours of sleep. Maybe you want 1 hour of alone time a day, whether that means you're reading a book or you're meditating, whatever, and look at everything that you've got going throughout your day. When I did it, I had like 30 hours of things in a day that both I wanted to do and that I actually had to do. And I did this recently with somebody else, and I think she had like 29 hours of things, and it was like, whoa, okay. We need to take a good long look at what we're doing, what we're committing to, and where we can say no. And probably one of the best, actually, I think it's later on in here, but it's about setting boundaries around your time. And maybe that means you cannot be at the office for 12 hours a day. That means you maybe need to be at the office for 9. How many hours of sleep do you want to get? How many hours do you want to be with your family at the end of the day? Really take a look how many hours you're going to exercise per day. Is it 30 minutes? Is it an hour and a half? But take a look at that and where your priorities are. And then honestly be realistic with it too. Like, it's maybe not realistic to spend 3 hours with your friends on a weeknight. Maybe that's going to be reserved for the weekend. And during the week, you do a 30-minute phone call to a friend. If those are some of your bigger needs, that relationship and that connection. Okay, back to the essentials: sleep, exercise, good food. Can go on and on about all of these things individually, but good food, relationships. Those are more of your maybe your family, your children, your partner. Those more intimate relationships, your day-to-day relationships. Hobbies, those are what are the activities that you have in your life, your creative outlets. Community, so that's beyond your relationship, but what communities are you a part of? Is it a church? Is it a fitness group? Is it your work group? Is it a BNI? What's your community look like? And then your spirituality, and again, that can be a religious practice. It could be meditation. It could be volunteering. Where do you connect with something that's bigger than yourself? So those are kind of those self-care essentials. And we could get really, really granular. And I actually have a couple of different resources if you want to go very deep into all of these, that give you specific examples of these, and and how you can implement various activities related to these self-care essentials into your life. I was just looking at this book real quick. Yes, okay. Here are some of if those are the essentials, here are some occasional self-care things. These are not necessarily treats, because some people might do these all the time and that fulfills a need. Who am I to say that getting a massage every other day is not a basic need for somebody? But what I will say is that these are ones that are going to typically cost you money, and they are the ones that that aren't necessary. They're going to cause you, they're going to cost money, but that's fine. For example, if you saved up for something, but you should not engage in these activities if it's also at the detriment to something else. So for example, if you are in debt or extreme debt, or if feeling financially secure is a need of yours, then spending a ton of money on a retreat is actually going to not be self-care. It's going to cause even more stress. But these are examples of kind of those bigger self-care things that somebody might indulge in, going on a shopping spree or spa day or taking a mission trip, those sorts of things. But the stuff that's more, these are fantastic, and these are really great things that you can look forward to, and you're going to feel great when you're doing them, but they don't actually fulfill your needs on a day-to-day basis. So that's where they fall a little bit short. But what does is going back to being very self-aware, identifying what your needs are, and then finding activities that fulfill those needs on an everyday basis. So here are just, again, a couple of examples. Setting boundaries around your time. I would say that's probably the hardest one, but also the most impactful one for all of us. Then implementing some sort of daily exercise routine, meditating and relaxation techniques. So that might be breathing or stretching, doing a gratitude journal, prayer, spending quality time with friends and family, getting creative through writing or art or blogging or photography, making sure that you get enough sleep. Sleep is so important. Eating a really clean and whole food diet, and finding a constructive outlet for overwhelming emotions that allow the time and that you allow them the time and space that they need. That one can be hard too, because the quick fix is going to one of those coping strategies, but the self-care strategy is sitting with your emotions for a little while, crying if you need to cry, writing in your journal, just allowing those emotions to have the space that they need. Again, those are just a couple of examples. And one of the books that I'm going to send you, it's actually funny. I don't know who told me about these books. It was another coach, actually, because again, just as in the executive assistant world, we're really spending a lot of time fulfilling the needs of somebody else. So do therapists, so do coaches. It's really giving so much of yourself to somebody else. And that's why self-care for those professions are so important. So the two books are From Coping to Thriving, and then there's another one called Simple Self-Care for Therapists. But both of them have like very granular techniques on how to do a lot of these things. So I'm going to send you the links to these. So for example, there's practices for getting more energy. There's little daily practices you implement for relaxation, like a breathing technique, or how to relax your body. And these are all things you can do within 5 minutes, even if you're at the office. Like just take a minute, go into the bathroom if you have to, take a lunch break and go outside and do some of these techniques. And then that was the Simple Self-Care for Therapists. And then the other one is called From Coping to Thriving, How to Turn Self-Care into a Way of Life. And in the back of the book, there's like a whole list of various needs. So if you take the time to understand what your needs are, you might feel like you need clarity, or you might need affection, or you might need belonging. Whatever those needs are, there's actually lists of various activities in here to do. And then there's like detailed activities. So you can go back through and say, oh, well, I need clarity. And then they recommend journaling, for example. I found both of those books very, very just enlightening, and really, in fact, the From Coping to Thriving was really, really impactful for me, because I realized everything I was doing in my life was just a coping strategy, which I knew intellectually, but I didn't really feel it viscerally until I got to a point where I just burned out, and I was like, okay, self-care is the way forward from now on. What was the book? Yeah, it's called From Coping to Thriving. I'm going to send you guys both of, I'm going to send everybody the names of and the titles of those books in an email after this class. But those are the two, they're both great. So I wanted to talk really quickly about the whole self-care for longevity. So this is based off of a book. And again, these are like the basics. Which I just think is so interesting, that these also happen to be the basics if you want to live or potentially live to well over 100 years old. So these are based off of a book called Blue Zones, which was a book that they did a ton of research on the various cultures, and they're from all sorts of cultures, like from Okinawa and Sardinia, Greece, all Costa Rica, all of the cultures where people lived, sorry, I just saw somebody post a comment and I got distracted. I'm sure I think it's Clint. Clint, is that you? Yes. So all of these various cultures, they're across all economic groups and religions and everything. And so they did a whole research on all the people who lived to be well over 100 years old. And what they found were these 9 things that these people had in common. And if you think, again, as I go through these really quickly, it's back to those self-care practices that I mentioned in the beginning. So for a long life, move naturally. It's not about necessarily running a marathon or being in a CrossFit competition, but just about moving, gardening, moving around the house, walking to work, just move throughout the day. Purpose. So knowing what your purpose is, what gets you up in the morning, why, it's all back to your big why. What is your why? If you need help figuring out what your why is, we can talk about that too. That could be a whole other class. Downshift. So this is about taking a couple of minutes every day to practice gratitude. Maybe do 3 things a day that you're grateful for every morning when you wake up and every morning when you go to bed at night. That's a really great practice to implement. Or another person told me that they said that every time they go hit a stoplight when they're driving, they say something they're grateful for. So again, those are just self-care practices you can just put into your everyday life. Downshifting, other cultures did things like remembering their ancestors, taking a nap, doing happy hour. It was just about like taking a second and just being. The 80% rule is not the 80% rule that we always talk about, the 80-20% rule that we always talk about in business. But this is, although it happens to also be an 80-20 rule, but this is that these cultures, all of these people in the study stopped eating when they felt 80% full. That increases longevity. Again, that actually goes back to just being aware of what you're eating. Is it is eating a coping strategy, or are you eating to enjoy food? Are you eating for fuel? So when you're 80% full and they ate their smallest meal in the late afternoon or early evening, and then they didn't eat anymore for the rest of the day. The plant slant is what it sounds like, mostly a vegetarian. People who live the longest eat mostly vegetarian diet, soybeans, lentils. They only eat meat maybe a couple of times a month, and mostly pork and small servings. I was happy to see number 6 on the list, which was wine. Most people in these blue zones drink alcohol moderately and regularly. I think it was mostly red wine, but like 1 to 2 glasses of wine a week. And I thought it was funny. They said, you can't save up all of your wine to the end of the week and like drink 14 glasses of wine on the weekend. It's got to be regular and moderate. 7 was belonging. So that goes back to that the self-care essential need of community. And this particularly said being part of a faith-based community. Being with loved ones, that's the relationship self-care piece. So putting your family first. The people in the blue zones also committed to a life partner, which can add up to 3 years of life expectancy, interestingly enough. And then being part of the right tribe. So that is actually a little bit different than your relationships with your family and the community. It's about your social circle. And so groups of 5 friends that committed to each other for life. And that is, it's so much less about having all of these acquaintances and being, the life of the party, and who are your 5 people, that are going to be there for you for the rest of your life. And Americans, interestingly enough, only live to be about an average of 78.2 years old. So I think we all would like to live longer than that. And that starts with these self-care practices. Sorry, I'm looking to see if there's any questions in the comments. Great. Questions, thoughts, comments. Do people feel like they need these self-care practices in their life? Does somebody have a great self-care practice that they'd like to share? I would love to hear if somebody has got this at least a little bit down, because I could certainly learn from you. Awesome. Somebody just bought the book. Which book did you buy? The Coping to Thriving one is awesome. Somebody just said they bought the book. So that's great. Yep. Keep letting me know if you have any questions. So I've been doing a bunch of different free webinars, all leading up to the launch of Lead and Assist Group Executive Assistant Coaching, which launches on April 12th. It's going to be live interactive webinars like this for about an hour. I'll probably teach and coach on about one topic a week, but yet I'll have time for questions, challenges. Bring your issues to the call and we will work through them every single week for 3 months. You're going to have access to a private mastermind and accountability group online. We will be reading a book every month together as well. And you'll have access to me through email for any of your individual questions and challenges. In the past, people have sent me communications issue with their executives, or if it was time for them to move on. We've reviewed resumes and cover letters. So that's all of those types of things we'll be doing in the group coaching, which starts April 12th. It is $199 a month for that coaching. Oh, Courtney, yes, it's $199 a month. So I think it's $597 for the 3 months. Let me just take a look at all these comments real quick. Oh, Rebecca, great. I'm glad this came at a good time for you. Decompress. Yes. Oh, I forgot to mention the whole pet thing. I feel like pets are such a great place for self-care. Somebody just mentioned, Nicole just mentioned that she walks her dog every day when she gets home. She tells her the good and bad stuff that occurred during the day. People probably think I'm nuts that see me, but it really helps me transition from professional to personal. I think that's amazing. And I talk to my dog too. So that's awesome. Is there a Facebook group? So I do run a Facebook group for people who join my coaching. I suppose we could get a Facebook group going. I have another Facebook group for my book club. If anyone wants to join the book club, I'm going to send the link out for that as well. And we do have a ton of admin in there. We have a lot of executives and leadership professionals in there as well, but EAs are welcome to join. Coaching does apply to all administrative professionals. Absolutely, it definitely does. I use the term EA very loosely. And on a couple of my other webinars and in my blog, I've talked about this before. An executive assistant, the title can range from, anywhere from a chief of staff to a senior EA to an office manager to an administrative assistant. It's kind of just a loose title, but it encompasses a lot of roles in the admin world. So yes, it is for all of you. So I am going to send you all an email. It'll probably come tomorrow. You'll have this recording in case you want to take a look at it again. I'm going to send out those couple of books that I talked about and a great podcast that I don't think it's like totally specific to self-care, but I just think she's amazing. And that's Brooke Castillo, the Life Coach School podcast. I'm going to send you her link as well. I'm going to send you some more coaching info and links to some upcoming trainings. I've got a couple more free webinars coming up over the next couple of weeks leading up to the launch of Lead and Assist. And transaction coordinator. Awesome. Yeah. So I have a lot of like real estate admin in my groups. A lot of senior admins from Australia and Canada, and it really encompasses everybody, and office managers and directors of ops. So it's a really great community to be involved in. We took 3 things. Oh, and somebody else just said that they started a gratitude journal with her daughter. That's amazing, amazing, amazing. I love that. It's a great idea. Cool. Any other thoughts, comments, questions? Awesome. Look for an email from me tomorrow morning, and then you'll have my email in case you have any questions. I'm happy to answer them. You can also find me on Facebook. I'm pretty much on there all the time, and LinkedIn and Instagram. I'm probably one of the only Hallie Warners out there. So just type my name in, you'll probably find me. So awesome. Cool. And then, yeah, see, and people from the legal, professional, insurance industry. Awesome. Awesome. Cool. Thank you guys so much for joining. And looks like 3 o'clock is actually a better time for everybody. Is that true? I feel like there's more people on the call today. Yeah, okay, 3 o'clock seems better. Great. And then these will always be recorded too. So if you miss it, fine, but 3 seems better. Cool, cool, cool. Awesome. You know what I would love? I don't know. When I send this email out, I would love it if you guys responded to my email and told me what self-care thing you are going to implement this week. So I'll be looking for your emails, right? Because you're gonna email me back and tell me. Cool. I will talk to you all next week if you decide to join. I think next week we're doing, I think we're doing how to work with the right leader next week. So that's we're going to dig into some self-awareness there too. So if you want to join that one, I'll send the link out for that. But anyway, see you guys maybe next week or online. Have a great night, afternoon. Bye.